Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of The New Standard. And you're checking out the program on April 25th, 2024, Draft Day 2024, where the NFL drafts its number one picks. As always, you can catch the show on YouTube, do a search for The New Standard and Lance Williams and or Neil Coulong. Also, however you get your podcast, make sure you do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams and or Neil Coulong and Steelers, and make sure you give us a like and a subscribe, and make sure you please follow us on YouTube, and make sure we are your first source for Steeler news. Now, as I'm watching the draft, as I'm watching all of these picks go, and we're seeing the picks start to fly off the board 16, 17, 18. I think the story of this draft is offense wins. You've got to be able to score a bunch of points, and you've got to be able to have a quarterback. You saw 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round of this draft. I think the most surprising was Michael Penix Jr. being drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, but you saw 13 offensive players for the first time in NFL history get drafted at the top of the first round. I mean, that tells me that defense is highly variable, and that the way the game is set up, if you have superior quarterback play and you have offensive weapons, that you can consistently get after defenses. Now, we saw that last year, defense sort of made a comeback last year. Scoring was down. You got a lot of post-snap movement. But as you see right now in the draft, as the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock at 18, all of the defensive players are starting to make a run off the board. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Steelers do. I believe that whoever they're targeting in the first round will be available to them at this pick. I mean, you have corners on the board, you have the centers, you have a couple of tackles left, and you even have some wide receivers floating around there with first round grades if you want to take them. But again, I think what you see in this draft is that this is an offensive league. And even though defense had a pretty good year last year and trying to come back and fight the other flood in the tide of offensive football, that, hey man, if you don't got a quarterback, you can't compete. I mean, that tells you when you got 6 quarterbacks that get drafted in the first, I believe, 13 picks, and you get 13 straight offensive players. I mean, the league is basically saying, man, what's more consistent based on how the rules are set up? Offense is way less variable, that you can get a lot of offense, that you could produce offense more easily than you can stopping offense. So it's an offensive league. I know we love the saying that offense wins championships. Yeah, offense wins championships. I know you love that saying. I know you love when I say it. No, I know you don't love it when you say it. What's up, Big Donovan? And but again, I'm not. I'm sort of surprised by it. I think it is shocking because it's never happened. 6 quarterbacks in the first 13 picks. You've never seen that. Um, but I mean, it's just where the league is going. If you're going to err on a side of the football, you want to err on the side of offense. Now, we're going to be checking the Bengals pick is in. And, the interesting thing about this is X or Twitter is always first. Now, Donovan says wide receivers. Now, the Steelers are going to have great options. You got 3 offensive linemen on the board. You got top corners. You got a wide receiver. Me, I'm going back and forth. I'm vacillating back and forth between wide receiver, and an offensive lineman. Now, to that point, I think, particularly with this quarterback, Russell Wilson as your starter, I think what is absolutely paramount is you have to secure the depth of the pocket. The depth of the pocket as defined by that area in the pocket from the center, from the A and the B gaps, and both guards on both sides of the center. When you have a short quarterback, you cannot get your pocket pushed from the interior of your pocket. It disrupts the sight lines of the quarterback, and they can't get through their progressions like you would like them to. Now, the width of the pocket is protected by the tackles, or is established by the tackles. They will create the width and the arc in which the defensive ends have to get around. But in the interior, you're going to have solid pass protection in the interior of your offensive line. That's why you see guards getting paid so much money now, because of quick game and so much quick game in the league. Really, the only way you can impact the quarterback snap in, snap out is through the A and B gaps, through the interior. Now, you're going to have guys that are going to bring pressure, of course, and are going to impact the football game from the outside, like a TJ Watt. But with so much quick game, you've got to get interior pressure. You've got to get quick pressure in a quarterback's face. And if you have a quarterback as short as Russell Wilson, who's probably about 5'10", 6 feet at best, you're going to have to make sure that the interior of your offensive line is solidified. The other thing in terms of needs, and we've talked about this, the biggest need, I think, on a Steelers team is probably at the center position, followed by wide receiver. You could argue me back and forth. It's probably either one, but or it's 1A, 1B, but they have to get an anchor in the middle of that line. Plus, if you bring Arthur Smith in, who runs some outside zone stuff, some inside zone stuff, a guy that definitely wants to feature the running game and have the running game as the staple of his offense, you've got to be strong in the interior. You've got to have a center that is very good. And right now, I don't even know if they have a center on the roster. I think they do, but it's a backup guy that I would give somebody $500 right now if you could name him without using the internet. That's who they have on the roster that's currently a center. But I can hear, when Donovan says wide receiver, I understand. You look at that wide receiver room, they've got really one good wide receiver on the roster, and that's George Pickens. That's it. Now, there's been a lot of things floating around, and interesting enough for all the Steeler fans out there that wanted Amarius Mims, he goes off the board to the Bengals with the 18th pick. Um, it'd be interesting if some news came out and said if he was really one of their guys that they thought they were going to take. It'd be interesting to see. Me in particular, particularly with Russell Wilson and with Justin Fields, with guys that have had some struggles in the last couple of years with pass protection and being I think you can hear me now. I had a bit of microphone issues. I'm not sure what happened. My mic turned off. I'm not sure. Uh, in the words of Salt and Pepper, I have to say, my mic sounds nice. Check one. My mic sounds nice. Check two. My mic sounds nice. Check three. Are you ready? That's for all my hip hop fans out there that might know Salt and Pepper. uh, might know that song. My mic sounds nice from back in the day, but I seem to be having some issues getting my background set up too. So interesting. Never. I usually don't have these type of issues. Uh, particularly with the background and so on and so forth. But we'll keep talking about it. And we see that the Rams have. It looks like the Rams are on the clock. But that pick, the Mims pick is definitely one that was floated with the Steelers. It would have given the Steelers bookend young tackles from Georgia, which would have been very interesting to have two young tackles. But when you have, in my opinion, when you have a quarterback in Justin Fields and a quarterback. And Donovan, give me the thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm not sure what happened. I think we just had some issues. I'm not sure, but give me the thumbs up if you can hear me. We are almost at pick number 20. And so it'll be fantastic to talk about that pick and see how it impacts the Steelers. But Donovan, if you can, Mr. Tummy, if you can uh, give me a thumbs up and let me know if you can hear me. I'm going to assume that you can. Um, again, Steelers on the clock. A lot of players available. A lot of players available to them. You still have some tackles out there. You got some corners out there. You've got some wide receivers. If they took a wide receiver, I would not be mad. Like Donovan Sign said, when you look at their wide receiver room, it's not very good. You've got one wide receiver. You've got one wide receiver that's of any value, and that's George Pickens. And uh, I think they absolutely have to address that room. And I think one of the ways you can do it is by getting a high draft pick. But I will say this, as the pick is coming up, uh, the 19th pick is in, the Rams pick is in, so the Steelers are on the clock. If they don't take a wide receiver, with this first round pick, and they choose to go the route of the offensive lineman. And what we're going to do is after they make the pick, we're going to go through and go through a player profile of the pick. Then I'm going to give you my thoughts on the pick and what I think it sets up for day 2, day 3. And so, yeah, get your popcorn ready, baby. The Steelers are on the clock. This is when the draft starts. The draft starts when the Steelers pick. So in my world as a Steeler fan, this is the first pick in the draft. The world and the draft and everything revolves around the Pittsburgh Steelers and their draft pick. And if you are listening to the program and you are on Twitter and you see the pick, you could put the pick in the chat here and give me the pick early. And so it looks like the Rams are going to go with Jared Verse, and we'll see what's next. So the Steelers are on the clock. The Steelers, they got a lot of options. They have a lot of options, and always remember that value always plays a part, positional value. And don't be mad if they take a corner. Don't be mad if they take a corner. Tomlin likes his corners. I mean, but I think, to me, I would absolutely take an offensive player. I'd be a little disappointed if they didn't take an offensive player because, again, I think their driving issue is they have to be able to score the football. They have to be able to score. And once again, Twitter is undefeated, as Twitter announced the pick probably about 4 minutes before. And as I look at X and I'm looking at some of the streams or some of the threads on X, I'm sure they will be posting the pick very soon. Uh, Listeners, you're checking out the new standard with the 20th pick. the Pittsburgh Steelers select. Make sure you like and subscribe to the program. And again, Steelers are on the clock. It will be very interesting to see what they do with this pick. I'm getting and Blue Gold chimed in. Time to draft Mitchell. I hear you, baby. I hear you, baby. It's going to be interesting to what we see. The one thing we know is they're not going to draft. They're not going to draft a quarterback. They're not going to draft a tight end. They're probably not going to draft a guard, a linebacker, or a safety. I know that narrows things down. I know that narrows things down. But I want them to draft an offensive player. I I want a wide receiver. That's what I want. And that might be sacrilegious as a Steeler fan to say, I want a wide receiver, but man, I want the Steelers to be able to score some points. And the other thing, it is absolutely awesome to see these families' lives change as these young men chase their dreams. I mean, definitely when these guys play pro ball and they make it this far, it is a sacrifice by the entire family. I mean, you've got moms and dads and sisters and brothers taking guys to practice, going to trainers, making sure they continue to work on their craft, making sure that they continue to go at it. So when you see all this emotion, when you see these young men get drafted, it's because of the sacrifices that the family has made for these individuals to get here. And you just love the fact to see your young man or your son or your um, nephew or play their dreams, get there, pick that, get there and live out their dreams. It also helps that they will be highly compensated. I'm not going to leave that out. But, again, it's great to see these young men, like you see on the TV. It's where dreams get made. It's awesome. And as we see Steeler fans back in the day. And so the Steeler pick is in. We will get the pick, and I'm sure it's on X already, but the pick is in. And we will get the pick, I guess, from the ESPN broadcast after the commercial. But we'll see. And I'm not seeing it being reported on X right now as to what the pick is. So that's pretty interesting. Typically, X has it. And I'm going to refresh my feed again. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. My friend James Wex with a program still available. Terry and Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, left tackle Troy Fautanu, Brian Thomas, Byron Murphy, Graham Barton. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm excited. Steelers are still, I think, a team that very much needs good players. I don't think the Steelers are particularly close. So this draft is important. And, I'm never going to complain if they decide to build this team and draft the first rounder in the trenches. You've got to be strong in the trenches to be able to play and to play effective offensive football and to compete. Again, you've got to be able to secure the depth of the pocket, especially when you have a shorter quarterback like a Russell Wilson. Pass protection is absolutely important when you have two quarterbacks in your room that have taken as many sacks as Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I think they took about 80 sacks roughly last year. So if they go offensive line, I won't necessarily be mad. However, it's just, it's just not sexy. And so as I continue to refresh the thread, we will see. I don't think it's Barton because the way they're showing the feed on TV, you can see who's still available, like the highest picks that are still available. And I think the highest picks that are still available, they still have Barton on the list. And big up to D Love Sports. Love that Steelers draft cap. I will be getting one very shortly from my brother, who I had to break off again in a bet, because he bet that the Steelers would give the 5th-year option to Justin Fields. And I tried to tell him that there's no way you can give away 25, $30 million to a guy sight unseen, a guy that's never been in your building, that has never played. So it's interesting. We will see. We will see very shortly when they announce the pick. I'm scouring through X to see if the pick is going to be announced, and it still has not been announced. Just got the pick in right now. And thanks to my partner in crime, uh, Neil Coulon, I think that Neil is texting me saying that the pick is Troy Fautanu, the tackle from Washington. So we'll see. You heard it here first. I think the pick is the tackle out of Washington, Fautanu. So I just want to announce that. I'm getting that information from my partner in crime, Big Neil. And I think that is the pick. I think the pick is Troy Fautanu. And again, it is Troy Fautanu because James Wexel is reporting that as well. And see, this is what I'm talking about. When we were talking about the Steelers, how you cannot predict what this current regime is going to do. They went back-to-back tackles in the first round. Never thought they would do that. Never thought they would do that. And like Neil said, after going 27 years between selecting offensive tackles in the first round, the Steelers select them in back-to-back season with Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. Very interesting that they went back-to-back tackle. So what that does is you have your bookend tackles. You're going to secure the width of your pocket, not necessarily the depth. I'll just say this. When offensive linemen get selected, I'm not disappointed. And big up to Cam Hayward with the green suit announcing the pick. I'm never disappointed because you need outstanding offensive line play and you need great pass protection to be able to compete effectively and to have an effective offense. That wide receiver room is terrible. What it tells me, if they did not get a wide receiver, since they didn't select one in the first round, there must be a trade in play. Whether it's Sutton, Ayuk, there has to be a trade in play because the wide receiver room is terrible. But to get a tackle at his value at 20, it's hard to be mad at that. Now, I want to pivot real quick and give you guys some information on the pick for people who may not know him. And this is coming from the draft profile called The Beast. I think it was written by Dane Brugler. Let me see, let me make sure. Let me double check. I want to give the proper credit to. Yes, it was written by Dane Brugler. Dane Brugler of The Athletic, who does a fantastic job with his draft profile in his book. It's basically a book called The Beast. Let me just go through the offensive tackle, give you a quick rundown. Now, the tackle, let me see where he has him ranked. I see, interestingly enough, I'm looking for his profile here, and he doesn't have him ranked here. So give me a second while I peruse and I look through and try to find his player profile. I'm surprised that I don't see it here. That Brugler doesn't have it here. It probably is an oversight on my part. But what I will say is they want to fortify their offensive line. That's never a bad thing. However, they have some significant issues at the wide receiver position. And the last time I checked, A wide receiver. Oh, he's a guard. My bad. He's a guard. Troy Fautanu is a guard. That's very interesting that they went with a guard. My bad. I thought he was a tackle. They went with a guard. Let me read his profile. Um, that's that makes it really puzzling that they took a guard. I'm really puzzled that they took a guard. I would not have thought that. Maybe, and as we read the profile, maybe he can bump to center. Um, but clearly, what it says is they did not have the centers ranked as high as some of the pundits thought. And indeed, he is the top prospect from Brugler as a guard. Let me read you some of his weaknesses, his strengths and his weaknesses. The strengths are athletic, sturdy frame with disproportionately long arms, light on his feet with balance and lateral agility and pass protection, or models his game after Rashawn Slater, delivers shock with his punch and quickly recoils his hands and snatches rushers, graceful movements out in space when climbing to the second and third levels, shows off outside range or pin pulls and wide receiver screens, locks on and mauls defenders in the run game, turning bodies with sheer strength as a base blocker, can clamp down on powerful five techniques and seal the edge, always looking for someone to block, and competes with a touch of insanity. Weaknesses. Insanity is something that Pittsburgh Steelers fans absolutely love. And I want to get back to your comments too, Edward James Gardner. Yes, I want to get back to your comments. A 2-year starter. Here are some of the weaknesses. Needs to be more measured in space and stay collected with his angles. Gets a little too much cloth in his grip. Flagged 3 times for holding. And 2023, couple of false starts. Inside pass rush moves give him trouble. Likes to vary his pass sets, but can get caught leaning and needs to rely on proper depth. I don't want to jump the gun. I want to jump into Edward James Gardner's comments. And he wrote, not a fan, knee-jack reaction. It screams that they wanted Mims. Bengals got him, so we reached on a guy, just like when we reached for Artie after the Bengals got that one guy. Now, what I will say is, to that comment, if he's coming in to play guard, that's interesting. Who's going to play center? You know, if he's going to bump to guard and be that guard, and ideally, you would want him to be your starting guard. Who's going to play? Who's going to play center? There's still a big question. There's still 2 big questions, 2 huge questions on this offense, and that's who's your center and who's going to play wide receiver. Now, I will say this. When you draft a guard, I mean, eh, honestly, man, it's like taking a 5 to the prom. I mean, straight up, it's like taking a 5 to the prom, man. I mean, I'm not like sitting here super excited that they took a guard. I mean, I'm not excited with that. Steeler fans, what's your thoughts on the pick? Please hit me in the chat. What's your thoughts on the pick? As we jump into this, Eddie757 wrote he was projected to go higher. Former scout Matt Williamson loves him, and he was one of the guys who was willing to move up a couple of spots to get. He is going to play right tackle. That'll be interesting. I mean, we'll wait and see. You look at the roster. The only center that they have on the roster is Ryan McCollum, Texas A&M, 2 years of experience. That's it. I mean, I would again. Hey man, I always want something sexy in the first round, and I'm sorry. Like, I'm a football junkie. Obviously, guards ain't sexy. However, big up to Builder's Life. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Hey, I mean, he's got the pedigree. Polynesian linemen are outstanding and have been outstanding in the league. But again, they have one center on the roster, Ryan McCollum. Let me read off the wide receivers they have on the roster: Dez Fitzpatrick, Marquez Callaway, Calvin Austin, Khalil Harris, Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, George Pickens, Quez Watkins, and Deuce Watts. Uh, I'm not sure if you put all them together. I mean, we talked about on the last show. You got 120 plus targets that you have to make up for with the, with DJ being gone. I mean, you got 120 targets. I mean, what are you going to do? How are you going to make up for those targets? But again, as we watch the draft go past, it is absolutely great. Seeing the mamas and the dads and everybody so emotional in the drafts. But again, I'm not going to give my overall thought. My thoughts on this grade, but actually I am, because I said I was going to grade it. My thoughts on the pick are this: I'm puzzled. Unless he's going to bump to tackle, it did not make sense for me for them to have drafted a guard in the first round. That doesn't make sense to me. However, if he can bump the right tackle or play either tackle, maybe it makes sense. And so Eddie 757, as he's played left tackle in college, tackles a premium position more so than center, absolutely. They have him. I mean, I'm familiar with the Pac-12. I don't watch a ton of college football, but I know Brugler had him listed as a guard. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie 757. He had him as a guard. His overall thoughts on him as a player was overall he's explosive on the move and in contact with foot quickness, body control, and temperament to stack wins in both pass protection and as a run blocker. While he has the talent to remain at tackle, his skill set also projects well to guard and center, and he offers legitimate 5-position potential on the next level. So I'm wondering, and it's interesting, I'm wondering why Brugler has him listed as a guard, and then he wrote in the profile that he was a tackle. So if he's going to play tackle, it makes more sense to me. So with him playing a tackle, if you were to ask me for the grading of this pick, I think you need an upgrade from Dan Moore. I think Jones showed flashes. So if he is definitely being brought in to play a tackle, I like that much more than him being a guard. So with that being said, I think tackle is a need, so I would give that a B. Little disappointed that they didn't address the need of wide receiver and or center. I think those are two bigger needs. For day 2 and 3, I think you got to see them hitting those positions. Maybe they come back and hit that center position, in the second, or a wide receiver in the second, center in the third. I think they've got to address those two positions. If you don't see them draft a center, a wide receiver tomorrow, there's a trade in play. Now, that's one thing that I'm not seeing on X, is that there's been a trade for Ayuk, or there's been a trade for Cam Sutton, or not Cam Sutton, but I have not seen that as well. It's interesting to me that corners have dropped so far. But again, left tackle, to Eddie 757's point, is a premium position, much more so than a guard or a center. If he is indeed kicked to that, then hopefully the Steelers will have bookend left tackle and right tackle, bookend tackles for the foreseeable future. But with that, we are going to go ahead and conclude. We're going to have another show tomorrow detailing the second and third round picks as well. And where do the Steelers go? Where do the Steelers go tomorrow? Get your thought. Give me your thoughts in here before I jump off. Where do the Steelers go tomorrow? What position groups? What players do you think they're going to draft? Throw it up here um, on the chat, and when I see it, I will talk about it tomorrow on the show. But with that, the pick is in. The Steelers take guard slash tackle, also could play slash center, Troy Fautanu out of Washington, 6'3", 317, 5.01, 40-yard split. And actually, one more thing that I want to do before I get out of here, because my thought is that he's probably going to be a high RAS guy. Because what the Steelers do is nowadays they don't fool around with RAS. They are taking in terms of relative athletic score, they are taking guys that are outstanding in terms of their RAS. That they're taking guys that are absolutely athletic freaks. So I just want to see what his RAS, and be patient with me as I look up his RAS score. Uh, but I'm going to predict that his RAS score. I'm not going to keep you guys and hold you guys while I look up the RAS score, but I'm going to guess that his RAS score is probably very good. I would I would not be surprised if it is absolutely green, um, because the Steelers don't make that. They don't do that anymore. They don't. They take guys that are highly athletic. Like, they don't fool around anymore in the first round or in the high rounds, and take guys uh, like a Jarvis Jones that aren't athletic. I'm gonna guarantee you that he's a very athletic player, and that he is probably in the green range when it comes to his RAS score. But again, Steelers draft a tackle slash center slash guard offensive linemen as their first round selection. They take bookend tackles. First time they taken two tackles back to back in the draft in a zillion years. So clearly, pass protection was paramount. They want to fortify that line. They do have a couple of quarterbacks who take a lot of sacks, and I think one thing you can do to help out your offense is to solidify your offensive line and make sure that your quarterback has pass protection. But with that, we're going to conclude the show. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.